There are parents who only look at you when they think you're getting it wrong. The rest of the time, they don't really see you at all. I'm telling you this straight, because if I start circling around it, I'll end up making excuses for people who never really earned them. My name is Daniel. And if you're listening to this, it's because someone told you I was there for Lucia's rise. Lucia, the baker from WinOwl team, the one with the little videos online, the one with the tiny bakery that smells like browned butter halfway down the street. But the truth is, what I saw wasn't a rise. It was a quiet war. The kind you fight with flour on your hands and a knot in your throat. The first time I saw Lucia was on the beach avenue at Las Canteras, almost opposite the Auditorio Alfredo Kraus. I was sitting on the seawall, in that weird wind that brings salt and sand and sometimes a fine mist of rain, staring out at the sea without really thinking about anything. She ran past, carrying a cardboard box in her arms. She held it tight against her chest, like whatever was inside was alive. There was flour on her black t-shirt, on her jeans, on her forehead. Her hair was tied up any old way. She set the box down on the hood of a parked car and stood still for a second, catching her breath. I watched her close her eyes and count, it seemed, to 5. Just 5. And then she wiped her hands on her pants and kept walking fast toward a doorway in WinOwl, where the bakery is now. Right then, without knowing who she was, I knew that woman was holding up the world all by herself. I lived 2 buildings down. Unemployed graphic designer, freelancer by obligation, surviving on cheap logo gigs and bar menus for places that wanted something modern, but free if possible. Las Palmas, at that time of day, is a city of half-raised shutters, yellow guaguas, and the smell of fresh bread mixed with gasoline. Lucia opened the bakery in a small place, almost uncomfortable, with an old floor and a display case that looked like it had been borrowed. I walked past every day. I didn't have money to buy anything, but I still stopped to look in. There was something in the way she arranged the pastries, like she was lining up wounds, not sweets. It took me weeks to work up the courage to go in. The day I finally did, it was drizzling. The light outside was gray, but inside everything glowed a warm orange, like when you open the oven and the steam hits you in the face. "Can I get you something?" she asked. Her voice was deeper than I expected. No sugar in it. Like she refused to sound sweet by default. I stared at the display, pretending to think. In reality, I was doing the math in my head: rent, electric bill, ingredients, taxes. I was counting euros that weren't mine. "Whatever you've got left over," I said. "The stuff people leave for last." She barely laughed, just a short breath of air. "Nothing's left over today," she replied, "but I can offer you a broken cookie. The broken ones don't sell." That was the first time I tasted anything she'd made. A salted butter cookie, crisp, with a corner missing, as if someone had taken a bite and regretted it halfway through. The salt stayed on my lips for a long time. We didn't talk much that day. Or the next. I kept going back, sitting at a table in the back with my laptop, pretending to work. She moved between the kitchen and the counter, leaving a trail of vanilla and strong coffee in the air. When you go to a small place often enough, you end up finding things out without meaning to. I found out about her parents, for example. At first it was just stray phrases. "No, my family doesn't live nearby." "No, they don't come much." "No, they're not really interested in this." Then the details started to show up: a phone call that left her shoulders tight, a yes, Mom said through clenched teeth, that one time she threw a silicone mold into the trash so hard it bounced. One day, with no customers, while outside the sea was roaring against the promenade and the windows trembled a little, I asked her, "Did you always want to have a bakery?" She froze, sleeve rolled up to her elbow, a streak of chocolate across her wrist. She glanced toward the kitchen door, as if someone might walk out. "No," she said. "I always wanted them to stop deciding my life for me. The bakery came after." That's when her sister's name showed up for the first time. "My sister's the successful one," she added, wiping the table in slow circles with a cloth. "Finance. Expensive suits. PowerPoints. All those things that make parents proud." I just bake cakes and do stupid little things on social media. She said it with such carefully measured irony it hurt. Lucia had an account online where she posted short videos. I hadn't seen it yet. That same night, in my tiny apartment looking out over interior courtyards, I looked her up. I found her whisking eggs with a shy smile, explaining recipes with a clarity marketers would kill for. Her hands in close-up, the light of an improvised kitchen, the sound of the oven door opening. She wasn't just some girl making cupcakes. She was building her own language with sugar and a front-facing camera. The comments were a mix of sincere praise and condescension dressed up as advice. Your hobby is so cute, I'm sure you could get a real job with that talent, hope you study something serious too. Lucia's parents were an amplified echo of those comments. I realized that the afternoon they walked into the bakery for the first time. It was a Saturday, the street full of sunburned tourists, families with inflatable floaties, people dragging surfboards along the sidewalk. They came in like they were from another planet. He in a perfectly ironed light blue shirt, she in a beige dress that looked physically incapable of wrinkling. I was sitting at my usual table. The second I saw them, I knew exactly who they were. Not because they looked so much like her, just a bit around the eyes, but because of how they made her go rigid the moment the little bell over the door rang. Lucia, the woman said, without smiling. This is nice. Nice sounded more like cheap decoration than pride. He let his gaze travel slowly around the place, mentally listing flaws, the damp stain on the wall, the flickering light bulb, the display case that wasn't full. There are men who don't know how to look without evaluating. He was one of them. Hi, Lucia answered, wiping her hands on her apron. Do you want anything? We were just on our way to. They glanced at each other. Tomas and Vegeta, he finished, improvising an excuse. Vegeta, with its stone streets and gray cathedral staring up at the sky, is a whole different world from Guanertine, even if it's the same city. And we thought we'd come see how this was going. This. Not your business. Not your project. This. Lucia offered them coffee. They said no. They asked about her sister. Clara's coming for Christmas, the mother said. She might be getting a promotion. Did she tell you? Lucia gave the smallest nod. I watched the scene from the back, pretending to focus on my laptop. The light inside had turned whiter, colder. They're very happy with her at the bank, the mother went on. Of course, she's very responsible. She always was. The father looked at the counter. And how's this going? He asked. Is it at least enough to cover the rent? Silence. Lucia breathed slowly through her nose. It's going, she said. Step by step. He pursed his lips, like he didn't like the answer. You could have done something big too, Lucia. You were always smart. If you'd studied a real degree. The sentence stayed hanging in the air, full of things they didn't say. I felt a little whip of anger, but I kept quiet. It wasn't my war. Not yet. They left after 5 minutes. Bought nothing, touched nothing, left nothing behind but a cloud of expensive perfume and disapproval. Lucia leaned against the counter, her back to the door. She didn't cry. She just stared at a fixed point on the floor, like she was doing math in her head. It's always the same, she murmured. Always the same scene. Only the backdrop changes. From then on, when she talked about her parents, she called them they, as if they were a foreign country. I edged into her life the way you sit a little closer to the edge of a cliff every day, until, without realizing it, you're no longer afraid of the height. I started helping her with photos, with videos, with the brand design. Lucia didn't have money to pay me, but she kept me in coffee and let me try the new things that came out wrong. That's how a sort of strange partnership was born. She did magic with flour and sugar. I tried to dress that magic up in a bit of visual order. Her socials started to grow. Slowly, but steadily. So did the visits to the bakery. Tourists who came because they'd seen a reel about the banana cake my mother didn't like but everyone else devours, neighbors who came back again and again, people lining up on the sidewalk on a Saturday morning. I saw something dangerous in her eyes, a mix of satisfaction and fear. If this works too well, she told me one day, they're going to show up to remind me it's not enough. Who? Them. They always end up coming. She was right. The big break, though, didn't come because of the business. It came from something much smaller and crueler. It happened at a Christmas dinner, just before they kicked her out of the house. Lucía was still living with her parents then, in a spacious apartment in a quiet area, far from the noise of the beach. One of those homes where the hallways are long and the silence is even longer. They invited her to dinner, like every year, her and Clara. Until then I hadn't met Clara. I knew her from family photos online, business suits, wine glasses on Madrid terraces, captions like closing the quarter or success is a matter of discipline. Lucía told me the scene later, with an almost surgical calm, one night when we were alone in the bakery, cleaning up. The table was set with a white tablecloth, heavy silverware, tall candles. Her mother had prepared everything properly, as she put it, soup, fish, meat, dessert bought from a real bakery. Just in case you feel weird about trying your own, she said, half laughing. Lucía swallowed her answer. Clara arrived last, in an expensive coat and with her phone in her hand. She kissed her on the cheek and said, "So when are you inviting me to try your, what do you call them? Cupcakes?" "I don't make cupcakes," Lucía replied. "But whenever you want, come by." They sat down. They made a toast. The father talked about the Euribor. The mother about a neighbor who had separated. Clara about a possible promotion. They only asked Lucía about the bakery once. A quick question, no follow-up. Until the mother brought up what she'd clearly been rehearsing all day. "Lucía, honey, remember what we talked about," she said, in a soft voice. "About what?" Lucía answered, though she knew. "About how this sweets thing is fine while you're young, but everything has a limit. Your father's been looking into the possibility of you doing a master's. A serious one, in finance, like your sister." Silence. The sound of cutlery, distant. "I'm not interested in finance," Lucía said. "You don't know what you're interested in," the father cut in. "At your age nobody does. That's why parents exist. To guide. You were always good with numbers." Clara stared at her plate. "Dad, Mom." She tried to say something, but they cut her off. "It's for your own good," the mother went on. "Your sister already has a path made. You're still in time. You can't spend your whole life with little cakes and little videos. That's not a future." And right there, in that sentence, they broke something that was already full of cracks. Lucía stood up from the table. She didn't shout. She didn't throw anything. She just placed her napkin neatly over her plate, took a breath, and said, "I'm not going to study something I don't want so you can show me off. This is what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. But I'm not leaving the bakery." Her father looked at her as if a stranger were speaking. "If you're going to keep that attitude, you'd better start looking for somewhere else to live," he said. "In this house we don't support people who play at being entrepreneurs with hobbies." Clara opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Dad, don't say that," she whispered. "You be quiet, Clara," he cut her off. "You've already done enough, sacrificing yourself so we could at least have one daughter to be proud of." Lucía felt something strange. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was a frozen clarity, like when you come out of the ocean and feel the cold wind cling to your wet skin. "Fine," she said. "You don't need to kick me out. I'll go." That night she slept on a friend's couch. A week later, she moved into a tiny studio in Guanartine, 10 minutes walk from the bakery, across those narrow streets where there's always someone smoking in a window. When she told me all of this, her voice didn't shake. "And your sister?" I asked. My sister did what she always does, she replied. Tried to mediate without upsetting anyone. She sent me a couple of messages like, give them time, they'll get over it. And then nothing. From that point on, they turned into distant ghosts. No calls. No messages. Mutual emotional blackout. What came after was a mix of vertigo and routine. Lucía threw herself into the bakery and into her socials. I watched her arrive before dawn, with the city still half asleep, the streetlights on, the murmur of the sea the only constant sound. She'd switch on the oven, start up the extractor fan, slide trays in and out like she was preparing a ritual. There's something almost erotic about watching someone completely absorbed in what they love. The way the muscles tense, the serious expression, the bead of sweat sliding down the neck and disappearing under the fabric. Lucía, kneading, was exactly that, an intimate, powerful choreography. Her hands sinking into the dough, turning it, slamming it against the steel table, flour hanging in the air, catching on her eyelashes, the sheen of melted butter on the skin of her fingers. While she worked, I watched numbers. Someone had to think coldly: rent, suppliers, content strategy, posting times, metrics. I was the ice, she was the fire. Our bond was built from there. We didn't become a couple right away. First, we were two people who understood that emotional survival and financial survival looked a lot alike, both required discipline, sacrifices, and a certain cruelty toward yourself. In Las Palmas, time moves in a strange way. On Kalima days, for example, everything turns heavy and orange. It's like someone has put a dirty filter over the city. Lucía worked the same, even when the heat inside the kitchen was unbearable. You'd see her step out into the doorway, close her eyes for a second, let that hot air rolling down from the ravine, smelling of asphalt and sea, crash against her face. Then she'd go back in, without complaining. The brand online really started to take off when one of her videos went viral, a gofio and banana cake, titled "The Dessert My Father Never Tasted." It was just a recipe, but the phrase carried a story inside it. People felt it. The comments filled up with strangers talking about the things their families never understood, never approved of, openly despised. That's when we realized we weren't just selling pastries. We were selling the feeling that you could invent your own path, even if it smelled of burnt sugar and temporary defeat. 3 years went by. 3 years of early mornings, sacks of flour, suppliers raising their prices, regular customers, others asking for discounts, surprise inspections, Sundays with no rest. The bakery walls filled up with photos. People came from Triana, from Bagata, from neighborhoods we barely knew. You'd see them walk in with their phones in hand, showing the video they'd watched. I want this, the same as here. Lucía smiled, nodded, wrote down orders in a stained notebook. Meanwhile, her parents stayed as an absence. Not a single visit. Not a single "how are you?" I, who drag my own family ghosts around, got used to the idea that those people simply didn't exist. When someone asked Lucía about them, she just said, "They're fine. In their own world." Everything changed on a random Tuesday, one of those days when the whole city feels suspended between two states. It was afternoon, that dead hour when the customers thin out. Shadows were starting to stretch across the sidewalk. The sea at the end of the street looked gray. The shop's landline rang. No one ever called the landline. Orders came in through WhatsApp, through DMs, through anything except that museum piece of a phone. Lucía stared at it like it was a relic. "Hello," she answered. I watched her go very still. Her back, which was always in motion, suddenly stopped. "Yes," she said. "That's me." Silence. "I didn't know you had this number," she added, her voice cold. And then I knew who it was. Them. She wedged the receiver between her shoulder and her ear and started rearranging things in the display case. A mechanical distraction while she listened. I could only hear her side of the conversation. Aha. Wow. I didn't know. When? And is she okay? She bit her lip. She pressed her right hand against the glass, as if looking for balance. Yes, of course I'm glad she's, more or less okay, she corrected herself. Another pause. And why are you calling me? She finally asked. Her tone had shifted. Now it was hard, metallic. The answer on the other end was long. Lucía listened, breathed, and finally said, No. I don't think that's a good idea. Silence. No, Mom. It's not just work. Silence again. No, she repeated, louder. I'm not talking about this on the phone. If you want to see me, come. When I close. Don't tell Clara. If not, there is no conversation. She hung up. She stared at the phone as if it were a bomb she'd just managed to defuse. What happened? I asked from the kitchen doorway. She took a few seconds to answer. Clara lost her job, she said. Layoffs at the bank. Restructuring, they call it. She's been looking for months and nothing. My parents want me to hire her. The sentence bounced off the walls. And? I started. And they want her to run the business, she added, locking her eyes on mine. They want me to stick to the socials, because you're good at that, sweetheart. She let out a dry laugh. They say Clara studied something serious, that she has more capacity for numbers, for management. That I'm more creative, more impulsive, that it wouldn't hurt me to focus only on the artistic side. I felt that old urge to blurt something out, to say the first furious thing that came to mind. But I breathed. I stayed in that cold inner place I'd learned to inhabit when you finally understand that the important decisions are better made with an ice-cold head. What are you going to do? I asked her. I told them to come, she replied. To come here, onto my turf, without Clara. If they're going to try to move us around like chess pieces, the least they can do is look me in the eye. Her parents came that same afternoon. I was there. Not because I wanted to get involved, but because Lucía asked me to. Stay, she said. Don't say anything, just stay. The little bell over the door rang a bit past 8, when the place was already empty. They walked in with the same silent air of superiority I remembered. They had aged. A little in the hair, a little in the shoulders. But the way they looked at things was exactly the same. Hello, Lucía, her mother said. Good afternoon, she replied, from behind the counter. You have 10 minutes. If you need more, you can book an appointment like any other supplier. I sat at a table in the back, pretending to go over invoices. They saw me, and it made them uneasy. Is that, the mother whispered. He's my partner, Lucía said plainly. Whatever we discuss about work concerns him too. Her father cleared his throat. Look, there's no need to get defensive, he began. We come in peace. People who say that almost never come in peace, I thought. Her mother got straight to the point. Your sister is going through a hard time, Lucía. They've made cuts at the bank, she's lost her position. You know how things are. It's very unfair, after how hard she's worked. Lucía just listened. And we thought, the mother went on, that it would be a good idea for her to come work with you. This business of yours has grown, we have to admit that. But we know running a company isn't just making cakes and videos. Clara could take care of the management side. You could focus on what you do, without worrying about the numbers. In the end, each of you doing what you're best at. Her father nodded. It would be the most logical thing, he added. Your sister has experience, contacts. She could even negotiate better conditions with suppliers, with banks. You could focus on the image side. Social media is important these days, of course it is. You're good at that. But you need a cool head in charge. Silence. You could hear the fridge humming, the distant beep of a guagua. Lucía rested her hands on the counter. She looked at them like you look at an old crack in the wall. Let me see if I've got this straight, she said slowly. You kicked me out because my cakes and my videos weren't a real career. You didn't come when I opened. You didn't come when I almost had to close during the pandemic. You didn't come when I was on local TV. You didn't come when I expanded and hired staff. You never came, basically. She paused. And now that Clara's out of a job, you want her to come here, take charge, run the business, and I go back to my little creative corner. Is that it? Her mother's mouth fell open. It's not like that, she stammered. You're exaggerating. We just want to help. Both of you. Lucia said. And did you ask her what she wants? We thought you'd be happy to work together, her mother tried. Lucia gave a lopsided smile. A tired one. Clara and I are not a bundle deal, Mom. She straightened her back. My answer is no. Her father frowned. Lucia, don't be proud. This isn't about ego. It's about your future. Exactly, she replied. My future doesn't involve handing over control of what I built alone to someone who doesn't even know what this place smells like at 5 a.m. She said it coldly, without raising her voice. Her mother put a hand to her chest. How can you say that about your sister? She's worked so hard. I'm not talking about her effort, Lucia cut in. I'm talking about mine. About my choices. You've always mixed the two things up. The silence that followed was heavy, almost physical. Her father looked around, as if searching for a foothold. You disappoint us, Lucia, he said finally. Always so impulsive. We're only trying to help you. I caught the faintest flash of pain in her eyes. But it vanished quickly. I don't need your help, she answered. I needed your respect. That offer comes too late. Her mother tried a different tactic. At least think of your sister. She's very upset. She feels like a failure. Then let her come, Lucia said. If she wants to talk, she can come herself. No intermediaries. Her parents exchanged an offended look. Fine, he said. We won't insist. He turned to leave. When you really need her, remember you rejected our hand, he added, before stepping out. The door closed with a soft gingle. Lucia stayed frozen, hands still resting on the counter. The evening light slanted in, staining everything a dirty orange. Outside, people walked past as if nothing had happened. You don't hate them, I said, more as a statement than a question. No, she replied. To hate them, I'd have to still be expecting something from them. And I don't expect anything anymore. That sentence, spoken with that calm, hurt me more than any shout. 2 weeks went by before Clara showed up. I didn't know if she would. I knew her face from photos, from the odd LinkedIn update I'd stumbled across. But I didn't know how she moved, what her voice sounded like. She came on a Thursday, just before closing. The bakery smelled of lemon and browned butter. Outside, the sky over Las Canteras had that violet gray that warns of wind. Clara walked in with an awkward air, like someone who isn't sure if they've just stepped into enemy territory. She wasn't wearing a suit anymore, just jeans and a white shirt that was too crisply ironed for that neighborhood. Up close, she looked more like Lucia than she'd probably admit, same nose, same jawline. But her eyes held something different, a kind of sophisticated exhaustion. Hi, she said. Lucia was filling eclairs. She didn't look up. Hi, she replied. The silence turned thick. Can we talk? Clara asked. Alone. Lucia glanced over at me. I understood. I'm going out for a smoke, I said, even though I don't smoke. If you need anything, just yell. I stepped outside and leaned against the wall of the building, staring at the strip of sea squeezed between the blocks. Scooters passed, a kid was crying in some apartment above, the greasy smell from a nearby bar mixed with the sweetness from the bakery. I couldn't hear what they were saying. All I could see were their silhouettes moving behind the glass. Clara talked a lot at first, gesturing. Lucia, not so much. She just folded her arms, shifted her weight from one leg to the other, turned her head. Then something changed. Clara's hands stopped moving so much. Lucia leaned on the counter, closer. There was a moment when I saw them both go still, facing each other, like the air had thickened. I only decided to go back in when I saw Clara bring her hands to her face. She wasn't sobbing out loud. She was crying silently, with that kind of soundless crying that hurts more because it doesn't make a noise. Lucia wasn't hugging her. She was just there, a meter away, holding her gaze. If you want, I can go, I said from the doorway. Stay, Lucia replied. Almost everything's already been said. Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, not caring about her mascara. I'm sorry, she murmured. I know I have no right to show up here and cry on you. No one answered. Clara took a deep breath. They told you this was my idea, didn't they? Lucia asked. Yes, Clara admitted. But it wasn't. I mean, partly. I did tell them I felt lost, that I didn't know what to do, that I didn't want to go back home. And they started in with your business. How it would be logical. How the two of us together could, you know. She let out a humorless laugh. They loved that word, logical, she said. Lucia looked at her with a strange mix of tenderness and caution. What do you want, Clara? She asked. Without them. Without their lines. Without their fear. What do you want? Clara stayed quiet longer than people who always have an answer usually do. I don't know, she said at last. That's the problem. I never asked myself what I wanted. I just did what was next. School, good grades, university, internships, the bank, more bank, promotions, targets. All very fine. All very applaudable. She ran her fingers through her hair, nervous. And now suddenly I'm here, 30-something, no job, no partner, no place of my own. With a resume that looks impressive on paper but that I'm not sure I want to keep using for the same thing. And your bakery. She looked around. Your bakery smells like something I don't have. It smells like real life. Like something that's made and eaten and finished. Like something you can't fit into an Excel sheet. A strange silence settled. I felt like I was intruding on something intimate, but I also knew my place was there, as a witness. Lucia rested her elbows on the counter. Did you know they kicked me out because of this? She asked. Yes. Clara replied. Well, not exactly like that. They said you'd blown it out of proportion. That you just got angry. They told me to start looking for somewhere else to live if I didn't study what they wanted, Lucia clarified. That's not exaggerating. That's literal. Clara pressed her lips together. I didn't know what to do, she admitted. I was always the one who behaved. The mediator. The one who didn't make noise. I thought that if I said something too harsh, you'd get mad at me too. So I chose to disappear a bit. Cowardly, I know. Lucia stared at her for a long time. I hate you a little for that, she said, without sugarcoating it. Clara nodded. I get it, she whispered. I hate myself a little too. There were no dramatic tears, no cinematic hugs. Just two women looking at each other with the truth finally laid out on the table, like a cake you cut without fear of finding it raw inside. Our parents want me to hire you, Lucia said. Put you in charge. I know, Clara replied. They've repeated it like it's the only possible plan. Her voice shook. But I don't want to take anything from you. I didn't come here for that. I came to tell you that I don't want to keep being their metal. That I'm tired of living someone else's dream. The air in the bakery grew dense, but not hostile. It was like the steam that comes out of the oven when you open the door. It hits you, blinds you for a second, but it also carries the smell of something that's almost done. So, why did you come? Lucia asked. Clara swallowed. To ask your forgiveness, she said. And to ask you for. I don't know if you'd call it a chance. Not a job. A chance at. She searched for the word. At being your sister, I guess. Lucia lowered her gaze to her own hands. She had dried chocolate on her knuckles. I don't know if I know how to do that, she murmured. Me neither, Clara replied. We can learn. I watched something break and mend at the same time in Lucia's face. A gesture that held both relief and fear. I'm not going to let them put you above me again, she said firmly. Not here, not anywhere. I don't want to be above you, Clara shot back. I want to be beside you. If you'll have me. A long silence followed. The kind of silence that, in my head, lasts minutes, though it was probably only a few seconds. Lucia took a deep breath. Okay, she said. But with conditions. Clara nodded. Whatever they are. Lucia started to list them, with the same analytical bluntness she used when deciding on recipes or suppliers. 1. I run this bakery. Final decisions are mine. If something goes wrong, the face that takes the hit is mine, so the control is mine too. Clara nodded without hesitation. 2. If we work together, you're going to get your hands truly dirty. No staying in your corner with Excel and emails. You're going to scrub, you're going to learn to haul shutters up and deal with difficult customers. I've dealt with drunk investment bankers, Clara tried to joke. This is worse, Lucia replied. Here, people come in hungry. They both smiled, just a little. 3. We're not telling them anything until the two of us know what we're doing. No plans, no figures, no achievements. Nothing. They're not our bosses anymore. Not in anything. Clara went quiet for a moment. That's going to hurt them, she said. I've already had my share of hurt, Lucia answered. They can manage their own. I felt a strange peace hearing that. The break with their parents wasn't a slammed door, but something subtler, an internal change in hierarchy. They, who had always sat at the top of the emotional org chart, were pushed to the margins. To a footnote. And what about me? I asked finally, breaking my shadow role. Where do I fit in this org chart? They both looked at me. Lucia smiled for the first time all afternoon. A real smile. You're still the grumpy partner who reminds us we have to pay our self-employment taxes, she said. And the only one I let criticize my photos. Clara held out her hand to me. Then I guess we'll be working together, she said. If you want to. I shook it. I'd spent years designing identities for businesses that didn't believe in themselves. Here, for the first time, I was watching something different be born, a company that was, at the same time, a chosen family. The months that followed weren't easy. Nothing truly changes without resistance. Clara started coming in every day. The first ones were a practical humiliation for her, getting up before dawn, wrestling with the oven, learning that sugar burns worse than oil, that dough has its own timing and people do too. She cut her fingers, burned her arms, ruined expensive clothes that were never meant to be near flour. I watched her come apart, layer by layer. The efficient executive who knew how to move around Triana or Madrid slowly dissolved, making space for someone clumsier but more real. Lucia, for her part, learned to delegate. To let Clara handle some of the numbers, negotiate with suppliers, think about projections and risk. She did it distrustfully at first, checking everything. Little by little, trust was built not because they were sisters, but for something simpler, results. When their parents found out Clara was working there, it was through other people. Someone sent them a photo, the two sisters on social media, in a video presenting the new seasonal menu. Their mother called. Lucia didn't pick up. I have nothing to say to them, she told me, watching her phone light up over and over. When they want to come buy a cake like any other customer, they'll be welcome. In the meantime, they can get used to not deciding. There was a calm coldness in her words that impressed me. It wasn't active resentment. It was closing the books, numbers balanced, accounts clear. The bakery grew even more. We opened another small place in Triana, near the main pedestrian street where people stroll on Saturdays, window shopping and drinking coffee. Lucia's personal brand solidified. She wasn't the cupcake girl anymore, but Lucia, the baker who tells you the truth while her caramel burns. In one of her most watched videos, she spoke about her family story for the first time without metaphors. We shot it at night, in the kitchen, with the lights off except for a lamp over the work table. Her in front of the camera, no makeup, apron stained. They told me this was a hobby, she began. That baking wasn't a career. That making videos online wasn't a job. That the numbers had to be handled by serious people. She paused. Today I can tell you they kicked me out of my house for not giving this up. That I spent years without speaking to my parents. That it still hurts. But I can also tell you that this hobby employs 10 people, pays 2 commercial rents, and has pushed a lot of folks to turn on the oven at home and stop asking for permission to be who they are. She didn't say Clara's name or her parents. She didn't need to. When we uploaded the video, I was expecting backlash, aggressive comments, fights. What came was something else, stories from people who had walked away from imposed careers, imposed marriages, entire lives of obedience. People who had also been thrown out of some house, of some love. That day I understood something simple: success, when it's born from an act of disobedience, always carries a small sadness inside it. A kind of melancholy for the life that could have been, for the people who could have walked with you and chose not to. Over time, Lucia and Clara decided to draw a final line. It was on a mild winter afternoon, one of those days when in Las Palmas people bundle up in light jackets and complain about the cold while the thermometer sits at around 20 degrees. The three of us met in the back of the Guanartine shop, where we keep boxes and molds. My parents want to come talk, Clara told us. They're insisting. They say they're willing to negotiate. Lucia gave a humorless laugh. Negotiate what? What exactly are we supposed to give up so they can sleep at night? They say they feel pushed aside, Clara added. That now that things are going well, we don't count on them. That it's not fair. I looked at the two sisters. They had changed. They weren't the neat executive and the underestimated baker anymore. They were two partners, with similar dark circles under their eyes, hands marked by different but complementary kinds of work. We can see them, I said. But not one-on-one. This isn't a parent-child talk anymore. It's a conversation between adults with separate lives. Lucia nodded. Let them come here, she said. But this time, we set the terms. Their parents came on a Saturday, when we closed at midday. They sat at a table with a coffee they paid for, an important detail. Their mother wore the air of a victim, their father, the same as always, just more contained. It hurts, what you're doing, she began. We feel like you've erased us. Clara took a deep breath. We didn't erase you, she said. You erased yourselves when you decided to throw Lucia out for choosing her own path. Her father tried to interrupt, but she went on. All our lives you taught us that success only had one shape. I followed it. Lucia didn't. I got applause, she got reproaches. Now it turns out the world has changed and what Lucia does also counts. And you don't know what to do with that. She leaned forward. You can't come now and rewrite the story as if you'd always supported us. That's not true. We know what happened. We were there. Lucia spoke next, her voice steady. I don't owe you my success, she said. I don't owe you this bakery. I don't owe you eternal punishment either. She paused. So here's how it's going to be. You can be part of our lives if you accept that you no longer get to decide over them. You can come to eat, to celebrate, to buy bread. You can be grandparents someday, if that ever happens. But you will never again sit in front of us to dictate what career is valid, what business deserves respect, what life is good enough. Their mother started crying, this time without an audience to applaud her dramatics. Their father stared at the table, defeated. "We did what we thought was best," he murmured. "No one teaches you how to be a parent." Lucia nodded, without irony. "I know," she said. "I'm also doing what I think is best." No one teaches you how to stop chasing your parents' approval. There was no movie-style reconciliation. No group hug, no grand lines. Just a tacit agreement. We kept moving forward with our project and our lives. They could come closer only as far as their humility would let them. They drop by the bakery sometimes now. They buy something. They pay. They leave. They're not villains or heroes. They're just people limited by their own fear. Lucia, meanwhile, still gets up before dawn. Clara ended up teaching management workshops for small entrepreneurs in a co-working space near Mesa y Lopez, where before she only went to shop in fancy stores. Between the two of them, they built something that goes beyond pastry. When I lock up at night and we pull down the metal shutter, the city sounds different. You can hear the murmur of the sea, the cars climbing toward the ring road, the occasional drunk laugh spilling out of a bar. Inside, the smell of sugar mixes with metal, with effort. Sometimes the three of us stay sitting at the back table, in dim light, going over numbers in silence. Lucia with her notebook, Clara with her laptop, me with my charts. It's in those moments, when they're arguing about what to do with a new collaboration offer, or which recipe to take off the menu, that I think about how it all started, with a broken cookie and a daughter considered lesser for not wearing a suit. I'm not going to lie to you, not everything is fair, and not everything got fixed. There are wounds that are already part of the internal map and won't fade. Lucia still sometimes tenses when her phone rings in the middle of the night. Clara still feels the urge to justify everything to their parents, even if she no longer acts on it. But something did change at the root. They stopped asking for permission. That, in the end, is the only kind of rise that matters. If I'm telling you this story quietly, like this, almost without inflection, it's because I learned that pain, when you master it, doesn't disappear. It just gets arranged. Like a tray of pastries in a display case, each in its place, each with its name, each with its price. Lucia no longer tries to get her parents to understand the value of what she does. She just makes sure the dough rises, that the oven works, that the people she chose as family, her sister, her team, a few others, are there when the day turns hard. I watch her work, from my little corner of numbers, and I think that, in the end, we're all a bit like that. Children expelled from some house, trying to build another where the smell of fresh bread weighs more than any voice that once told us we weren't enough. And even though it still hurts, even though there are still nights when she lies there staring at the ceiling, body exhausted and eyes wide open, there's something different in the way she breathes. She no longer breathes waiting for someone's approval. She breathes checking if the oven's at the right temperature. She breathes feeling the heat of her own life, handmade. I don't know if that's called forgiveness, justice, or just plain survival. All I know is that, ever since she stopped living to be someone else's pride, Lucia sleeps a little easier. And that, believe me, is already a lot.